Welcome to the Anomalous Review, the official podcast of the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies. My name is Michael Glosson. I'm a philosopher of science and technology and the host of the show. This conversation is part of a special series on the Anomalous Review that we're calling the UAP Witness Series. Let me tell you a bit about it. In this series, I interview SCU members who've had their own personal encounters with truly anomalous phenomena. These conversations are a new format for us. As an organization, SCU leans toward a hard science approach to studying UAP. That means using quantitative data that fits into spreadsheets and that can be analyzed with consistent statistical methods. Things like the size, shape, acoustical, and kinetic properties of UAP. That's the kind of data that SCU specializes in. Now that's partly because of our skill set. Most of our members are working scientists and engineers. So we're used to using that kind of data and those sorts of analytical tools. But this approach also serves as a kind of hedge that keeps sober discussions about UAP from falling into unstructured or even unreasonable speculation. You probably know the kind of conversations that I mean. We like structured investigations that employ the tools that we're familiar with. But it would be a mistake to think that we at SCU focus on the hard data points simply because we think that that's all there is to these phenomena. Every one of those data points, after all, comes from an encounter that was deeply and uniquely personal. And these encounters are far richer, stranger, and more complex than the numbers in a spreadsheet might ever suggest. The tools of quantitative analysis just aren't great for analyzing those unique experiential dimensions, though. So, for our analytic work at SCU, we usually just set the rich elements of those stories aside. But shortly after we launched this podcast, SCU leaders told me that there are several SCU members who'd had their own encounters with UAP. And after a few conversations, we decided, let's invite those members to tell their stories, just as they experienced them, along with all the questions and ideas that those encounters gave rise to. Encounters like these are, after all, the source of our hard data points. And inviting people to tell their stories here is a way of showing what's on the other side of the spreadsheets, the unique, complex, deeply strange, and often unsettling experiences that push us to ask questions that data-driven analytical methods aren't always fit to tackle. But let me just say this clearly. Acknowledging the strangeness of these encounters and giving people space to tell them as they live them is in no way a departure from SCU's data-driven scientific mission. But it's meant to complement that mission by acknowledging the very elements of our source material that often compelled us to want to do the scientific work in the first place. This is an expression of the conviction that doing good science means holding on to intellectual humility before a reality that's under no obligations to conform to our expectations or to our tools. And that means facing reality as it comes, even and especially when it challenges our frameworks. We're putting out 2 versions of each interview. There's a full-length conversation and then a short partial edit for those who may not have time to commit to the full conversation just yet. This is a short version. In it, you'll get a quick outline of the guest's experience along with a taste of the deeper discussion that we had in the full conversation. These encounters are full of strange, fascinating detail, and if this version grabs you even a little, we really encourage you to check out the full interview. But since the full versions go really deep, we wanted to make these shorter ones available too. My guest in this interview is Mike Pritchard. Mike started his career in robotics and artificial intelligence by solving cutting-edge problems for NASA and the Department of Defense. He did everything from using ultra-wideband radar to detect mines, to navigating GPS-denied environments, and applying machine learning in lots of interesting and novel ways to solve problems that he probably can't always talk about. He's helped launch engineering teams from scratch, he's supported clean tech and AI startups, and he was part of a team that secured a $700 million venture fund at one point. He's even earned a commendation directly from NASA. Up to the point of this interview, Mike served as a Presidential Innovation Fellow at the U.S. Digital Service, a position that he has since moved on from. I found Mike to be one of the most open and reflective guests that I've had on this show, and I really enjoyed talking to him, so I think you will really enjoy this conversation. Here now is my conversation with Mike Pritchard. Mike Pritchard, thank you for being here and for telling us your story, being willing to telling us your story. So why don't you just start? We're doing a series on experiencers, or maybe we don't use that word. Maybe we use witnesses to UAP activity who are SCU members, and you're both. So why don't you just tell us what your experience was?
Yeah, well, thanks, and thanks for having me. Yeah, no, absolutely. So this happened in 2024. So this is March 28th, I think, 2024. It was in Colorado. Um, Basically, me and my son, who was 13 at the time, we went on a father-son ski trip to Breckenridge. So lots of fun. I used to live in Colorado back in the day. Now I live out in Northern Virginia. So we skied, had a great time. And on the final day, we decided that we wanted to drive from Breckenridge to Colorado Springs, which is where I used to live. I used to live in a town called Manitou Springs. That's on Pikes Peak.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful place. And the drive from Breckenridge to Pikes Peak is just beautiful too. It goes across the plains of Colorado, so just gorgeous. So anyway, we're leaving. We get up early. We're leaving Breckenridge. Clear day, clear blue skies. Which up until then had been like snow and fairly bad conditions, but that day was beautiful blue skies. So we're driving out of Breckenridge, and for those that have ever been there, like if you're driving out of Breckenridge, you'll know that you hit basically the mountain. So you have to basically climb out of Breckenridge. So the first kind of climb out of Breckenridge, which goes out to a place called Hoosier Pass. So we're driving up there, and it's pretty crazy switchbacks. It's kind of like the switchback you see on TV, where it's like literally you come literally right back, right? And as you're driving, you're like your car is like you're looking, up into the sky as you go around the corners, right? So we're driving up and just chatting away, as you do, kind of zoned out. And I came around one of these corners. So as we're looking up, I saw. Above the tree line, I saw this thing, and yeah, that's the start of this event. It it's kind of hard to describe. It was it like at first we thought it was a water tower, right? Like literally, and I said to my son, like, "What is that?" And he hadn't seen it yet. And then we realized looking at it, it's like the shape of a water tower, but there was nothing between it and the ground. So that was the first thing we noticed is like, wait, there's nothing connecting this thing to the ground. And it was very like metallic, a highly polished metallic surface. But that's what it looked like. You can imagine kind of a chrome finish, unblemished, perfect, very reflective surface. And it's just stationary right there above the tree line. It just looked wrong. It just so when you see it, it's because you got to put it in perspective where it's in the mountains and there's trees, there's all the pine trees, and there's a little bit of wind and things. There's a little bit of motion going on, and obviously we're driving, but this thing is stationary, like perfectly
Still,
stationary.
yeah.
Yeah, as if it's like just painted onto the sky. And it's hard to get a sense of perspective of this thing because I don't know how big it is, so I couldn't really figure out how far away it is, and there's no markings on it, no lights, no nothing. It's just there. So weird. So as we come around the corner and start going back on the switchback, so now as you imagine, like we're driving up the corner, first see it, and as we come around the switchback, now it's to our left. So we're still looking at it to our left. And I'm going pretty slowly at this point because you can imagine I'm like, what is that thing? And then I had to stop. Okay, I got to stop. I got to stop. I got to find somewhere to stop. This is crazy. But because, like I mentioned, there'd been a lot of snow, days before, there was snow everywhere. There's the snow plows that, created those giant snow berms to the side of the road. So there was literally nowhere to stop. There's traffic behind me. And I distinctly remember looking in the rearview mirror and I saw, like, I even remember there was like some kind of like truck, like a Bronco, or I don't know what it was specifically was, don't remember. So like, crap, there's someone behind me, so I got to pull over. So I'm like, okay, great, I'll just keep going until I can find somewhere to stop. And then I'm looking, and then this is where it got weird, and like, kind of frightening, in that I I had this powerful, I kind of I don't know how to describe it. It's feeling, emotion came over me that I would best describe as that feeling when you're really late for something. It's that feeling where you're like, oh crap, I have to be somewhere.
Urgency or something.
Yeah, it's like a general sense of like, oh, I wish I could stop, but I can't because I got to do the thing. But the weird thing is, we're just driving. Like, we had no plans. We had nowhere to be. We didn't care. We're just sightseeing and having fun. But yeah, no, I had this like really powerful feeling. Man, I wish I could stop and take a picture of the most interesting thing that's ever happened in my life. I've got
But
to be somewhere. And it was totally weird. And but I remember, like, okay, then I drove, and
oh, well, wait, did your son saw it too?
yeah, he saw it too. Yeah, so we're both. I mean, as we're driving along really slowly at this point, we're both looking at it. We're both looking at it, and I told him, like, let's find a spot. Let's try and get our phones out, take a and then we both just kind of like, nah, we have to be somewhere. Um, but I kept on going, and now it's like there's trees between us and it, so we couldn't see it anymore. And but as I got up to the actual pass itself, then there's a parking lot up there, and so I was thinking, okay, I'll turn around there and come back, right? But when I got there, unfortunately, it was still had snow plows had made it. I couldn't get into it. But I remember thinking to myself, you know what, screw it, I'm just gonna make this happen. I'm gonna turn around and go back or whatever. And then it came over me again. I had this intense feeling of like, no, 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 I can't. I just don't have time. And then we left the area. And then I remember like just feeling all day long, like not even remembering it, but having this weird feeling of dread. That's probably not even the right word, but I had this weird feeling hanging over me all day long. We just ignored it. We didn't talk about it. We didn't say anything, and we just carried on going. And we went to Pikes Peak, went to a wolf sanctuary. It was awesome, and then we drove back to the airport and flew home, and we just didn't talk about it. But I remember having this, like, that day, having this weird sense in my head, and dread would be the closest word I could describe to describe it, but that's not really accurate. Just a weird feeling. Then I forgot about it. I didn't talk to anyone about it, and 2 months went by.
You didn't tell your wife or anyone?
Did not tell my wife. And bear in mind, you probably get this sense, I talk a lot. If anything interesting happens, the first thing I do is I phone up my wife. Now, bear in mind also, I have been doing UFO research for a couple of years leading up to this point.
Just out of a personal interest, just no,
Yeah.
not after having experienced anything, but this was an interest of yours prior to the experience.
Exactly, yeah. So for me, this is a dream come true, or it should have been. But no, and I didn't talk to my wife, I didn't talk to anybody. And about 2 months afterwards, it just, I can't explain it. It felt like a block had, like a wall had come down in my mind. It suddenly I talked to my wife about it, but it was weird. It was the way I talked about it wasn't like, hey, this is an amazing thing happened to me. I wasn't talking to her with excitement. It felt like I was talking to her about a traumatic event. I've never had PTSD in my life, but I can imagine that's kind of that's probably putting it too strongly, but I went from like, it was weird. It wasn't like I didn't remember.
Mm-hmm.
It was just, I didn't talk about it. I don't know if that's because I didn't want to talk about it or I needed time to process, but for whatever reason, I couldn't touch that memory. I knew it was there. I just couldn't talk about it. and then suddenly I could, and I can't explain that. Um, and it was like a tidal wave. And when I first talked to my wife, I was pretty emotional about it. Like it was like, and even though I don't think anything traumatic actually happened, it kind of felt like I'm relaying a story that I didn't want to talk to her about
Mm.
because this thing had happened and it wasn't a good thing that had happened to me, and I didn't want to talk about it. But I had to talk to her. I had to get it off my chest. I needed to process it myself. Um, and
So
then yeah,
we've actually done a longer version of this conversation that
yeah,
everybody should check out. In that longer version, though, I think one question that's probably coming up for people who are listening to this is, well, maybe something really traumatic did happen to you and you just don't
yeah,
remember it. But in that longer conversation, we recount a very clear timeline of what happened, and it doesn't seem like there is actually any room for anything to have happened that you don't remember. It's just that you do remember exactly what happened, and nothing traumatic did happen, but there was this emotional kind of malaise or block on you for a period afterwards.
yeah. I believe so. Like, I mean, in summary, I mean, we know we bought gas before we left Breckenridge, and when we got to the wolf sanctuary, we took a picture, and I could see the timestamp of it. So just doing the math, like that, there's plus or minus maybe an hour in there. But that's probably being generous. But I don't believe anything happened. Although I do, and this everything I just relayed to you, I'm sure about.
Hmm.
But the one thing I have is I remember when I got to the other side of the pass and we drove on, there was no traffic behind me. I remember looking in the rearview mirror and there's no traffic behind me. And like I said before, I distinctly remember there being traffic because we were in traffic because it's Breckenridge in the winter. It's traffic. But I'm not sure about that. I can't be 100% sure about that. So that's weird. But
So maybe you were sitting on the road longer than you thought, or
but we never stopped. We could never stop. We tried, like that's the thing. Every time we tried to stop, this whole thing happened, and there's never a place to stop anyway. Yeah, I mean, if I was fully like if this happened to me again, I'd screw it. I'm just stopping the car in the middle of the road. Because if anyone asks, I'm like, go look at that thing over there. Um, and that also reminds me, I do also remember looking in the rearview mirror. I don't think anyone else saw it
Mhm.
because we were driving slowly, and I think we were annoying people. It's weird. So yeah, it's very strange.
Well, just a few questions to clean up and any really important lingering questions that people might have about whether what you saw was anything anomalous. You did look on satellite imagery and all that to see if there was any kind of structure there that might explain what you're saying, and you did an
Yes.
enormous amount of research, and nothing turned up, right?
Yeah, and I lived in Colorado for many years. I've been to Breckenridge many times.
You've been on this road many
Been
times.
on this road many times. But yeah, I put satellite imagery. I even found satellite imagery for the morning of the event. I think it was maybe the evening before, and there's nothing there. But there's no structure there. I've looked on Google Maps like since, and there's no like this is a part where there's nothing up there at all. Nothing at all. It's just forest up there. I have thought about going back sometime just to hike up there. But yeah, yeah,
Well, thanks. I think that covers most of the highlights. We do an almost 2 hour conversation on this um, for the longer version, and we talk about a lot of the emotional content of the experience, the how you look into it with GPS software
yeah.
and imagery, and also your previous history and interest in studying UAP using sort of aqua sonar. What is the term? Hydra.
Yeah, so I was studying getting hydrophone data to at Catalina Bay, which is
Yeah,
a
Catalina
hotspot.
Island.
So yeah, so I've got back into that work since this happened. So
Oh, you have.
finally, yes, I finally have tried to get like this event kept me away from UFO research. I don't know why, but after we talked, in a way it helped me process this, and I've been able to get back to that. So I've actually started working on that again.
Did
So.
we? I can edit this around a bit. Did you, after our first conversation, is there anything that came to mind that you thought, oh, that's something I hadn't jogged
No,
before?
no. One thing that I talked to my son hasn't really talked about it much, and he has said something interesting, and he said this a couple of times now, and he has said he weirdly remembers seeing a cube. And so when I ask him about that, it's like, yeah, and he says, I can't explain it because I saw with my eyes the metallic sphere, or saucer or whatever, kind of an egg shape. Well, not a squashed sphere was the
Squash
shape.
too, yeah.
Yeah. Now he says he remembers it being that shape, but at the same time he has this weird feeling that he also remembers it as being a cube
The
shape.
same object, not that there was a cube in addition.
Yeah. Same object. Yeah. Which is weird. And he said that to me a couple of times, and we've talked about it. And he's like, I can't explain it, but that's something I remember, which is it. I don't remember that at all. But I think I've told you before, I looking at this, I'm trying to, I've thought a lot about this since this happened, like as an engineer, thinking about trying to think about the physics behind all of this.
Mhm.
The conclusion I keep coming back to is what I'm seeing is not a physical object in the sense I don't think it's a metallic object. I think it's a field. I think I'm seeing the edge of a field. Um, it's too perfect to be metal. But I don't know. Like like a perfect distortion or
Mhm.
something like that. That's I don't know. I mean, the object was perfect. It's hard to explain it. It's like a perfect object up there. Um, but but his observations does make me think that maybe it was a field, and that you can get this situation where subliminal messaging. So you can imagine if you had a field that's cycling at some kind of frequency, that maybe when the field is like off for that momentary off between this off on,
Mhm.
you can see through it, and maybe so that's the thing. He had a subliminal perception of there being something behind the field that was cube shaped.
Oh, that's
Now
an
that's
interesting
total
hypothesis.
speculation.
Sure, yeah, but it's
Yeah,
not.
yeah,
It has some explanatory value. It's something we
yeah,
could think about and investigate eventually, or at least look in the mathematics of it, or something. And it also seems to resonate with accounts that you hear from, say, fighter pilots who said that they see cubes within spheres.
yeah, yeah. That's what I find it. I find it really fascinating, and I think it makes a ton of sense because I think when you do think about the physics, like how are these things, what kind of form of propulsion are they using, and like the most logical explanation is based on what we know is some kind of distortion, like distortion of space time. Like and if you could do that, the notion that you could create a distortion, a bubble around yourself with light goes around it, which so might look like a reflection to us, or might look like a
Yeah.
stealth. It might be a stealth field, or who the hell knows, right? Um, and I think technologically, what happened to me is more akin to like hitting electric fence,
Hmm.
where it's like they because we know like there does exist today weaponry that can you can beam microwaves at someone's head and it can cause psychological effects like fear. So the notion that you could create some kind of device that you can beam at someone and with very accurate targeting of different parts of the brain, you could tickle that part of the brain that makes you feel something like fear, makes you
Unwell or urgent or anxious or something.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So that's like in my mind, that's where I kind of landed on is like what I hit was some kind of technological device designed to keep me away. And I think all the other things I felt may have just been a human mind trying to deal with what happened. I don't know. I in my mind is the I can see it clear as day. It's like burned into my mind what I saw. I'll never forget it. It was so weird.
A
So
fascinating story. It strikes me how different so many people's encounters are, but how there's a core thread of this anomalous, weird, inexplicable in a way that doesn't seem explainable as a misperception. I mean, there are things that can be misperceptions and they make sense that way. But when a person says, I stared at an object and its appearance was so strange that I can't even put it into words, that's not the way misperception happens. Misperception happens by fitting a perception to something familiar in that it isn't. In these cases, you're having a perception that fits absolutely nothing that's familiar, and that's just not how misperception works, I don't think.
Yeah, and I do think like the your monkey brain is trying to make sense of what it's seeing, and that could then like manifest in a number of different ways, which is kind of interesting. But I do think like ontological shock is real because even for me, where I would say going into this based on research, I'm pretty certain, like 95% certain that UFOs are real. There's a real thing happening right now, and if I were to put money on it, I would say that alien visitation is happening. Like, but then after this happened, now it's 100%. Now I know. I don't know what I saw, but I can tell you what I saw was technological in nature. There's no doubt in my mind that that was a technological thing in nature.
As opposed
No
to a
doubt.
natural phenomenon. It wasn't ball
No,
lightning or whatever.
way too perfect, way too perfect. And then but then the effect that happened to me, I think those two things correlated just to me tell me technological, um, and knowing that and it's not human. There's no way in hell that like I don't buy into. There's no way Lockheed Martin has technology like that. No, just it's no way. Um, it's kind of mind blowing. It's like now that I know that it's really hard to process that. Like knowing going from like, this is probably a thing that's happening to like, holy, this is all real. This is really a thing. Like this is real. Like, and then going down that rabbit hole of like, what do you do with that in your life? Like, how do you?
Like, how do you go to work the next day? Like, what do you,
I
yeah.
know, I know, yeah. And this is something I thought about a lot. It's like whenever something crazy happens at work, which happens a lot lately, I keep thinking about this. I'm like, it's like, but there's aliens.
Yeah, or, yeah.
It's like, why are we not all hands on deck studying these things?
Do you think it's just because we don't know what we would do? Like, how do you do that? How do you get all hands on deck and
Yeah,
organize?
that's the question. I mean, I've been in the government. I work in the, I work. I'm a senior member of the senior executive service, right? I have worked in the executive office, worked in the White House, and I don't buy the conspiracy theories. Like some to some extent, but the idea that there's some global conspiracy, it's hard to process. Not that that might not. I mean, okay, it's possible. Not saying it's not, but Occam's razor just just tells me highly unlikely.
It's not
You
the
know,
most parsimonious explanation. Yeah.
no, so the only thing I can think of, it's them. It's whoever these things are. They don't want us to do that. So it's like the thing that happened to me. They're manipulating us to not want to discover them or not want to find out. I don't know, but that's the only. I don't know.
I mean, in
It's
your case, that would explain a lot because you were a person who already had a really strong interest in this, who was presented with the very thing that you're very interested in, and somehow you behaved in a way that doesn't make sense to you. You turned away from it for like months afterwards and
yeah.
didn't even. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it's true. I mean, I don't believe they're there for me. I mean, maybe, but I suspect they were just there, right? But it is a hell of a coincidence. I gotta say, it did. I have thought a lot about that. Like, is that a form of suppression? Like, is that when UFO researchers get too into it, does something happen to them? I don't know. I mean, um, I have a hard time believing that because it's a very me-centric view of it, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Or I think it's more likely now. But then why are they there? Why are they there in frickin' Breckenridge? Like that's a busy. There's lots of humans around, but I do think that not. I think us seeing them was unintended. I don't think other people saw it, and even my son didn't notice it until I pointed it out to him. So I have wondered if there's like you don't see these things unless you really like focus on it. I don't know. There's something weird to it. There's something definitely there's a second level thing going on. That yeah. I don't know. I mean the whole thing is just because what I saw, I've never read a report like what I saw. So if I was to make this up, this is not what I would make up. Like I was surprised by what I
It's a
saw.
good point. Yeah, if you were going to make something up that wouldn't be this.
Yeah, and in all the videos I've seen of like glowing orbs in the sky, when I see those, I'm not. I mean, I'm like, that's probably, but not. But this was like in my face. It's like slap in your face. There's no way to interpret it differently. And it's profound. I think that's like I'm trying to not fall down into a rabbit hole, and I think that might be why I didn't do the research more than anything else, is because like I don't want to let myself
Become obsessed with it? Or...
become obsessed to it. Like if you stare into the abyss stares back. Type of thing where. Um, but I don't know, and I came away with these things are dangerous. I did not. I think I mentioned this before, and it was not a pleasant experience. It didn't feel pleasant. Like it felt traumatic's the wrong is too strong of a word, but it felt like an unpleasant thing had happened to us, which is weird because again, I don't remember anything specific happening to us, but um, but then again, who knows, right? I I don't remember,
Yeah.
but I don't understand. I am kicking myself. I don't understand why I did not take a friggin' picture or video because my engineer brain is like, I want to get like I want to take video. I want to get like a prism.
Data.
Like, yeah, I want to see it in different frequencies. I want to like sample electromagnetic spectrum. There's all these things, and I didn't do any of that. It's so against my nature. Like I'm an engineer. I've been an engineer my whole life. When I see things, I want to understand them, and I'm deeply curious about things. And it was so out of nature for me. This whole experience is so out of whack. So I do think there's more to it than what I remember, but I'm kind of afraid, to be honest. I'm kind of afraid to dig into that more. But maybe one day I will. I don't know. But
These experiences invite a level of speculation that's impossible not to engage with, but that also might not be totally healthy. So I feel for you in the position that you're in. I don't want to speculate too much or go into too many routes of conversation because we go into those in a long conversation. I really do want everybody to listen to that. But this has been an excellent entree into the larger and wider experience that you and your son had, and that lasted months and months long. So thank you so much for being willing to share this with us.
well, thank you for listening. I mean, I will tell you that psychologically, this has helped me process. It sounds weird. I think I don't think people will understand that aspect of this, but I have had a hard time processing this event, what happened to me. So thank you. This has really helped. So,
Absolutely. Thanks,
yeah.
man.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
The Anomalous Review is a project of the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies. It's hosted and produced by me, Michael Glosson, and edited by Kelly Michelle. Our theme song was written and performed by Telma Crisanti. Communication and PR work is by Preston Dykes. Our advisory team includes Jennifer Roach, Robert Powell, Richard Hoffman, Joshua Pearson, and Larry Hancock. To find out more about SCU, check out explorescu.org.